Nathan Solstein was an unremarkable guy to most people except his family. He was in pretty good shape for a 66-year-old man, thanks to his habit of going to the gym 3 times a week. His curly gray hair was thinning on the top of his head, and there were wrinkles on his face, but not too much. He was a pleasant and witty man, and was well liked by most of his colleagues at Numbers on the Run, a small accounting software company. However, to his 2 colleagues, he was remarkable for one simple reason. He has just announced his upcoming retirement as a director, and his appointment will be announced soon. 2 people hoped to qualify for the job, which included a 6-figure salary, stock options, and quarterly bonuses. Aaron Royce, 37, has worked at Numbers for 13 years and is currently director of sales. He started out as an accountant, but 6 years ago made a very successful move into sales to expand his knowledge within the firm. He believed that knowing the multiple levels within the company would help him on his way to the top, he hoped. Jack Long, 39, worked at Numbers for 14 years, spending most of his career in packaging and distribution. He was an extremely handsome man, and he knew it, and he had a strong character that did not tolerate competition. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall, a strong 200-pound man, 2 inches and 20 pounds larger than Aaron. Nathan was in Aaron's corner as his replacement, but he only had one of the 5 votes among the directors. Everyone expected both men to apply, and maybe 1 or 2 others as well. Aaron wasn't surprised when Jack called him on Thursday of that week. The month's publication was expected to begin the following Monday, so Aaron was pretty sure that the lunch Jack had prepared for Friday had something to do with the job opening. Aaron didn't like the location of the restaurant for his Friday lunch with Jack. Both men made good money, and something about this less-than-stellar place seemed unpleasant. He felt relieved when he saw his colleague sitting at a table in the back half of a Mexican restaurant whose decor was straight out of the 1950s. Although the 2 men had worked for the same company for more than 10 years, they were not friends and rarely communicated. Aaron decided that he would wait to hear what Jack had to say before making small talk. "They say you're going to apply for Nathan's job. I'm telling you not to do this," Jack said right after the tattooed waitress took their order. Aaron looked at Jack blankly, wondering where this conversation was going. "Why do I want to do this?" he said. "Because if you apply, the whole world will see it on the internet," Jack croaked, handing Aaron a manila folder. Aaron slowly looked through the folder containing about a dozen photographs of his wife naked in the act of sex. Although he tried to act cool, Aaron gasped when he opened the folder, and then tears filled his eyes as he looked through the photos. His hands shook, but he had the presence of mind to close the folder when the waitress brought them their food. Aaron's head suddenly felt like it was going to explode. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, and his stomach felt like he had been kicked by a donkey several times. His Josie, had cheated on him, and judging by the photos, it had happened multiple times, including at least once in his own bed. How? When? Why? How long? What the hell? Aaron's brain screamed. Jack grinned and took another bite of his burrito. He sipped his margarita, looking quite pleased with himself. Aaron sat there looking shocked. It took all his willpower not to lunge at Jack while the bastard sat there sipping his drink. Aaron swallowed the margarita in one gulp. He stood up, picked up the folder, and walked out of the restaurant, smoke practically pouring out of his ears. Jack grinned. Aaron's secretary knew something was wrong as soon as she saw Aaron's face as he walked into his office. "Unless there's a light on here or Jack Long calls, I don't want to be bothered, Maggie. Is it clear?" Aaron snorted. "Yes, sir," the secretary said quietly. Sitting at the table and thinking about what had happened that morning, Aaron was shocked that Josie could so easily maintain her charade as his loving wife. He had never noticed anything abnormal in her behavior, never noticed a noticeable increase or decrease in the quantity or quality of their sex, never noticed anything that indicated she was sharing her body with another man. She was either the greatest actress in the world or the coldest woman he had ever known. Josie was gliding around the kitchen preparing dinner like she didn't care when Aaron walked through the door around 5:30 p.m. He watched her silently for about 30 seconds, wondering how she could be so calm about everything that was happening in her life. God, she's still a beautiful woman, Aaron thought. A mop of curly dark hair hung slightly below her shoulders. Her body was more athletic than curvy, but with large breasts and a firm ass. Her green eyes still held the wonder of a child, and her porcelain skin was wrinkle-free and clear, like a teenager's. She has always had a flirtatious personality, and over the years, she has been approached by more men than her fair share. Until the morning, Aaron was sure that she always refused them. Josie caught Aaron standing in the doorway, looking right through her. Something bad must have happened during the workday, she thought. Aaron, are you okay, baby? You look like your best friend died or something, Josie said. Or something like that, Aaron muttered, setting his keys on the counter and half-pacing as he walked upstairs to their bedroom to change. Aaron decided he needed more information before he could confront his wayward wife. He hoped that he could become at least half the actor she had been recently, so as not to give himself away until he was ready. Life went on. Aaron rented a lake house about an hour's drive from the couple's home for a long weekend, the following Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then he decided to confront his wife. The couple was unloading their SUV Friday afternoon when 3 large Harleys and a small car pulled up at a cabin 50 yards west of their cabin. Dismounting, the lead biker stood up and looked at the Royces. Well, Josie, actually, for a good 30 seconds before moving on. Under normal circumstances, Aaron probably wouldn't have liked such a candid look at his wife, but given that he spent most of the time staring hungrily at the woman getting out of the car, he couldn't be too upset. The man doing the searching appeared to be about 30 years old. He had a small smile on his handsome face, Aaron noted. Aaron guessed that the woman who got out of the car looked to be no more than 22 years old, but she was wearing both her tight jean shorts and her bikini top. Well, the other 2 guys on the motorcycles looked to be in their 20s and seemed to be respectful of the older, larger man. I wonder what this is about. Does she think she's with a big man, or is she available to all 3? Asked Josie. Aaron thought he detected a note of interest in his wife's tone. He thought it was interesting considering what he had just recently learned about his wife. The sun had not yet set when the couple heard a knock on the screen door at the back of the cabin. Aaron reflexively smiled widely as he opened the door to find a young woman standing there. Me, Hank, and the guys were wondering if you 2 would like to come and enjoy libations around the fire with us tonight. We have beer and some strong stuff, and you can bring whatever you want, said the young woman, who gave her name as Zydeco. Josie joined Aaron at the door and thanked the woman for the invitation. Sounds good, Josie said. We have cracklings, chips, and Slim Jims. It would be great to take them with us. We'll be there in 5 minutes. Josie took some clothes out of her suitcase and went to the bathroom to change. When she came out, she changed into tight, short shorts and a halter top with no bra. This was one of her favorite Aaron outfits. I can't let this girl make me look bad, Josie giggled. Aaron never minded his wife showing off her body and flirting a little. Again, this happened before, and this happened now. The 4 young men were sitting around the fire in a circle of sorts when Aaron and Josie approached them with bags of snacks and a bottle of red wine. Oh, wow, one of the young men said in a stage whisper, looking candidly at Josie. All eyes turned to the speaker, who blushed deeply. I mean, look at these amazing snacks. They even brought Slim Jims, he exclaimed, trying to hide his lack of subtlety. Yeah, that's right, Aaron said, as everyone laughed at the young man. Introductions were made from all sides. The big guy, who called himself Hank, patted the seat next to him and told Josie to sit there. The safest place in this pack is next to a big dog, he said with a laugh. We are part of a social club called the Breakers. I guess I am what you call president. Josie sat down next to Hank. Aaron found that the most empty seat was across from the 2 of them, next to the Zydeco. He hoped he was being subtle when he looked at the young woman's bikini top as he sat down. A case of beer, a bottle of wine, and a bottle of Jack Daniels disappeared around midnight. During this time, Hank became convinced that Aaron understood his intentions towards his wife. Several times, he put his large arm around the woman and pulled her towards him, and several times he rubbed his palm over her almost naked back and shoulders. Josie seemed to enjoy his touch, but she tensed when Hank leaned down and kissed her softly on the lips, right in front of Aaron. Hank looked straight at Aaron after he broke the kiss, and to Josie's surprise, her husband just grinned and took another photo of Jack. Aaron was very excited, but completely optimistic about what was happening before his eyes. In fact, the more he saw, the more convinced he became that karma was indeed on his side. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Hank said he was going to bed. As he was about to leave, he extended his hand to Josie, as if helping her up too. She looked at him confusedly, then turned to her husband, who was sitting there, smiling widely and nodding his head. "Really?" she whispered to him while everyone sat quietly and watched what was happening. "So, you and her?" "If she wants," he whispered back. The young woman looked at Aaron, then at his wife, nodding her head. Okay," she whispered back, rose to her feet and walked hand in hand with Hank to the cabin. "Well, I guess that means you and I will be staying here for a while longer," said a young man named Norm to another named Steve. "Let's give them some privacy for the first round." Aaron smiled widely at the couple. He stood up and helped Zydeco to his feet. Hank put his hand on Josie's ass as they approached the cabin door. She was having a hard time thinking clearly due to the combination of the wine, Hank's boldness all night, her husband's unexpected behavior, and her own condition. Hank wasted no time once he and Josie were in the cabin, pulling the rope at the back of Josie's head and watching the material fall. She turned around, bare-breasted, wrapped her arms around Hank's neck and pulled him towards her for a deep, passionate kiss. Zydeco wasn't in the mood to wait either when she walked into Aaron's cabin. She let out a soft moan and jumped into his arms. He anticipated the move and caught her ass as she wrapped her legs around him, and they both fell into a passionate kiss. They explored each other's mouths as he slowly walked her towards the bed before laying her down. Josie thought for a moment about both her husband and her first lover. What she really thought about was how different Hank was from the other two. Not only was he noticeably stronger than the other two, but he also seemed to be more powerful. He knew what he wanted, and he took it, as evidenced by the couple leaving the fire area. Aaron knew he wouldn't last long having sex with his first woman not named Josie in almost 15 years. Although he had not planned it, this evening turned out to be more than coincidental. He looked at the woman on the bed and smiled widely. She was just a dream. Her long red hair, her breasts even larger than his wife's, her elastic young body. Josie fell asleep with Hank holding her. Hearing the cabin quiet, Norm and Steve snuck inside, crawled into sleeping bags on the floor, and fell asleep. The room was light when Aaron woke up. The innocence of his new companion, whatever it was a great relief to his soul after his wife's betrayal. Josie woke up slightly hungover and more than a little disoriented. She quickly realized that the man sleeping next to her was Hank, and that she had spent the night in his cabin after having sex with him the night before. She started to get out of bed to relieve herself when she realized that Norm and Steve were lying on the floor in their sleeping bags. "It's okay, baby." "They've already seen a naked woman," Hank chuckled quietly. "But they haven't seen me naked yet," she whispered to him. "First time in everything," he said before she gently hit him on the shoulder. "All." Aaron and Zydeco moved to another cabin soon after they cleaned up. Aaron and Hank huddled around the cabin while Zydeco went inside and changed clothes. When she returned, she walked up to both men, gave Hank a quick kiss on the lips, and took Aaron's hand. The couple then approached a confused Josie. Aaron and his wife talked for a minute before he kissed her the same way Zydeco kissed Hank, then took the girl's hand again and walked back to the other cabin. "What just happened? Did my husband just trade me for Zydeco?" asked Josie. "Sort of," Hank answered confidently. "Or you could say I just traded Zydeco for you. I'll have you for the rest of the weekend. He'll get my girl." "I think it's a win-win," Hank said. Josie smiled, but her mind was reeling. Erin never showed or even hinted at such desires. She liked Hank, but was worried about the sudden change in her husband. He asked her if she enjoyed her night with Hank. When she confirmed it, he simply smiled at her and told her to enjoy the rest of the weekend too, kissed her, and left with the Zydeco. She and Hank then went to the other cabin to get her clothes, although she found out she wouldn't need much clothing for the next 2 days. Erin and Zydeco had already left when Josie and Hank got to the cabin that was supposed to be for Josie and her husband. Although neither Josie nor Hank knew about it, the other two went for a walk in a nearby town. However, Josie and Hank returned to Hank's cabin and spent the next hour having great sex. The couple then cleaned up and joined Norm and Steve for the 100-mile ride. Both Norm and Steve enjoyed the sight of Josie on the back of Hank's bike in crotch-hugging shorts and a braless crop top. Josie was more than a little confused when the quartet stopped at a convenience store for gas, until the three men explained to her that Zydeco and the other friends hadn't even thought about going out in short clothes. No man would dare say anything other than a compliment to a woman in the presence of more than one breaker, at least not if he liked to eat solid food regularly, Norm said. Although she still didn't look convinced, Hank grabbed her hand and began to drag her into the store before Josie decided she didn't want to be embarrassed and walked in alone. She blushed furiously as she walked past a family of 4 that included a couple of teenage boys who looked at her like she was made of gold. Hank grinned at the woman and gave her a hearty slap on the ass as the family walked by. Zydeco wasn't dressed like a nun for an afternoon of local shopping, wearing a tight tank top with no bra and a short denim miniskirt. Erin loved watching her breasts bounce freely. She didn't seem the least bit shy in her expression. "Do you have any idea how hot you are?" Erin asked. "Uh-huh," she replied, blinking her green eyes. Erin and Zydeco ended their walk with dinner at a nice local restaurant. Josie, Hank, Norm, and Steve grilled steaks and potatoes at the cabin before the night of drinking began. When Erin and Zydeco saw the fire lit, they grabbed a couple of bottles of booze and headed next door after she changed out of her miniskirt and put on a pair of tight gym shorts. Erin's eyes nearly fell out of his head when he saw what his wife was wearing. She had never dressed like this for him before, and he quickly wondered if she had ever dressed like this for her lover. She saw him gawking and blushed again. The 6 friends were drinking late into the night again. Erin and Zydeco were the first to call it quits, walking away hand in hand. Once Erin and Zydeco left, Hank became bolder in showing his affection for Josie. While Erin was there, Hank gently ran his hands over her bare stomach, kissed her lightly on the lips, and even slid his hand down the back of her shirt. However, once Erin and Zydeco left, he and his kisses began to become more passionate. Josie made no move to stop his wandering hands. "Guys, give us a few more minutes, okay?" Hank asked his 2 friends, winking after the conversation and pulling the woman to her feet. "You understand what your wife does, right?" Zydeco asked Erin shortly after they entered their cabin. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" "Yes," he said with resignation in his tone. "The number doesn't matter. I already know who she is." "Do you want to tell me about this?" she asked sympathetically. Erin spent the next half hour telling the young woman about his wife's infidelity with a coworker and the threat that his wife's sexy photos would be published on the internet. He explained that he thought if she had sex outside of marriage with one man, what difference would it make if she had more? Divorce happens, but at least he gets to try something wonderful. Zydeco smiled widely at the compliment. "So she knows about the divorce?" the woman asked. He shook his head. "Soon, and I'm sure it won't be very pleasant," he said. "But this weekend may have just softened things up, still working on the plan." Josie and Hank were just finishing up work when the woman noticed 2 other men in the room. "What's going on, Hank?" she asked nervously. "Violators always divide. Everything will be fine. The guys will be gentle," Hank replied. "My husband," she began. "He knows." "He's fine," Hank interrupted. Hank watched Josie consider his last statement for a couple of seconds. She raised her eyebrows as he stood up from the bed, and a naked Norm took his place. Norm quickly leaned over and kissed the woman. "Well, if Aaron is okay with it," she said. "I promise," Hank said in the background. "Enjoy yourself." Josie was completely exhausted when all three of them finished. "It was amazing. I've never done anything like this before, but now I need to sleep," she croaked to Hank. "She's funny," Steve whispered to the others as Josie began to snore lightly. The other two men nodded. Hank covered her, lay on his back, and put his hand on the sleeping woman. "So how does it work for you and Hank?" Aaron asked when Zydeco opened her eyes Sunday morning. "Well, good morning to you too," the woman replied. "I had a great time last night." "Thank you. I had a great time too, but I'm serious. I need to know how it works with two of you. Or three, or four. I need to know." "This could change my plans," Aaron said. The young woman's bright smile evoked the same response from her bed partner. "Seriously?" she asked. He nodded expectantly. "Hank is a really good guy, and I owe him a lot," Zydeco said. "Do you have time for a long story?" "Breakfast, then," Aaron replied. As the couple dined at a local IHOP, Zydeco explained that she had been with Hank for the past 2 years, right after she turned 21. Her stepfather kicked her out of the house after she rejected his sexual advances, and she stayed with a friend in her apartment. 2 young girls were enjoying an evening at a bar when a group of young men approached them and tried to pick them up. The guys got into a little fight with the girls until Hank and his friend intervened. Despite being outnumbered 5-2, Hank and his friend convinced the group to leave the girls alone. Zydeco first became Hank's girlfriend, then moved into the role of his woman, a wife of sorts. She kept his house, cooked his food, and provided him, and sometimes others, with sex. This was expected, but she was never pressured, she said. She figured she would remain his woman until Hank replaced her. "Do you want to spend some more time with me?" Aaron asked. "I can arrange it if you're interested." Aaron and Josie's plan was to drive home at noon. Aaron had a suitcase ready for Josie to put some clothes in, and he and Zydeco were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when Josie, Hank, Norm, and Steve walked into the cabin. Both Aaron and Zydeco noticed that Josie looked tired and walked a little cautiously. Zydeco looked at him with raised eyebrows. The ride home was calm for the couple. Josie had a lot of questions, but she was afraid to start a conversation. She'd had sex with all 3 other men, and while she thought he might know it, she couldn't be sure, and didn't want to just blurt it out. Plus, the conversation might have veered a little off course and into territory she didn't want to go into. Perhaps for the first time in his life, Aaron felt he could read his wife's thoughts. During the drive, he glanced at her several times and noted that she looked like she was either working on a complex math problem or was severely constipated. Finally, 10 minutes from their house, he decided it was time to talk. "Well, that was wild, huh?" he asked Josie. "We have to do this again. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did." Out of his peripheral vision, Aaron saw his wife wrinkle her nose. She really didn't think much about her husband enjoying a young woman, especially one younger than her. The young woman had bigger tits, a firmer stomach, and a firmer ass. Was she better in bed than her? Were these the same questions running through Aaron's head? Would he have the same questions if he knew about her other lover? Yeah, that was pretty wild," she said, stammering. "I even liked it. I'm just so surprised you agreed to this." "Yes, me too," he said quietly. "It just felt right. You seem to like him. And at least that way I got some too. A kind of eye for an eye, excuse the expression." Aaron grinned goofily as he spoke. Josie's first thought was that he sounded like a horned idiot, or that he was just acting, she suddenly thought. However, none of these ideas sounded like her husband. However, she did not tell Aaron about sex with the other 2 men. He noted this. Aaron wondered if Josie would meet her lover next week, after a sex-filled weekend. "Does it even matter to him?" he suggested. Josie did have a meeting with Jack, and it took place on a Wednesday afternoon the following week. Although she enjoyed the sex as much as always, she admitted to herself that it wasn't as good as her time with Hank. She found that the latter's larger size and more physical nature excited him more than her lover's more reserved nature, although Jack always went out of his way to be more physical than her husband. The thought occurred to her as Jack pressed her to the mattress. At this point, she really felt guilty towards Jack for the weekend with Hank, Norm, and Steve. Aaron was excited when he got home from work Thursday night. He explained that Hank had called him to ask permission to take Josie to a biker rally in Michigan from Friday to Sunday, and Aaron had responded yes to the request. "You get to be a biker chick for the weekend, baby. Isn't this exciting?" Aaron said with the most sincere smile on his face. Josie looked at her husband as if he had two heads. He did his best to hold back the wicked smile that threatened to break out on his face. Two could play acting, he thought. "You want me to be a biker? Seriously?" asked Josie. "I think it would be very hot, Josie," he said. Aaron explained to his wife that since they were going to the rally on Hank's big Harley, she would only be able to take a small bag with her. "He has leather things for you. As for the rest of the clothes, well, small clothes, small bag." "It's clear?" He smiled. Josie tried not to show too much shock or too much emotion. She couldn't believe how excited Aaron seemed to be that she was going to be a biker baby before he was supposed to pick her up from Hank on Monday. "Oh, wait. You're going to spend the weekend with Zydeco, right?" Josie said in a condescending tone that clearly irritated her husband. Aaron clenched his teeth to avoid saying something he would regret. He sighed. "Well, of course. You get Hank. I'll get Hank's woman." "Fair enough, Josie," he said, without mentioning the fact that he expected his wife to have more than just Hank. Do you love her, Aaron?" Josie asked quietly. Aaron thought for a moment. "No more than you do, Hank, I guess," he replied. Aaron and Josie met Hank and Zydeco halfway between their two houses. Zydeco stepped out of Hank's Harley with her small bag and was replaced by Josie. The two men nodded to each other and left. Aaron and Zydeco drove in silence for about 2 minutes before she proved to him that he was right in thinking she was insightful. "So, what's the game plan, Kemosabe?" she asked. Aaron glanced at her briefly as he drove. After giving Josie the leathers for the ride home, she was dressed in tight shorts and a halter top, her large, braless breasts swaying under her top as Aaron's Mustang sped down the highway. "You look good enough to eat, baby," he grinned. "Can't you wait a couple of hours, Tiger?" she asked, smiling back at him. "Aren't they bikers who are obsessed with sex?" Aaron pulled off the highway at the first motel he came across. "So, I feel like you two still haven't talked about her cheating, have you?" Zydeco asked as the couple snuggled together after sex. "I'm expecting it to be Monday when I get back to you to get her serviced, and I'm not bringing her back," Aaron said. "So this is the plan that Hank and I are helping implement? Are you trying to cool it down after you've served it?" "She doesn't strike me as someone who would take this very well," Zydeco said. "It's not, but there may be more to it than you think," Aaron said. "Would you like to take a little vacation with me?" "Is it true? I would love to do this. I'll need to grab some clothes when we get to my house on Monday," Zydeco said. "I think we should buy you something, too," he added, smirking at the young woman. "It's not that I don't like the halter and shorts look, but it's not appropriate for some of the places I'm going to take you, miss." Hank met up with his team a couple of hours down the road. The Breakers team collected 23 motorcycles heading to the rally, which took place at a park in central Michigan. Josie noted that most of the bikes had 2 riders. She was used to riding with Hank, and although she didn't need to hug him all the time, she enjoyed being in close contact with the big man. Aaron and Zydeco were eating dessert at a more expensive restaurant when Zydeco's phone vibrated. She asked Aaron if he would mind if she checked the message. He nodded, and she took her phone out of her purse, which, like her expensive outfit, had been purchased earlier that day. A smile spread across the woman's face as she looked at the message she received. She quickly looked around to make sure no one was seeing what she was looking at. A few minutes later, she handed the phone to Aaron. "You need to make sure no one else sees this, or we'll get kicked out of here," she said when he picked up the phone. Aaron looked around quickly. then pressed play on a video file that had come from Hank Breaker's teammate, Norm. Zydeco watched as Aaron's face turned from amazement to surprise and amusement. "Wow, 6 guys," he whispered. "I thought the last 3 weeks had been bad for her. I mean, I know she likes Hank, but damn." And she was definitely in the moment. She definitely wasn't thinking about me or Jack. "Wow, she really loves being a biker girl," Zydeco enthused. Aaron could only nod in agreement, holding the phone face down towards the woman. "Coffee and Bailey's?" Aaron asked. On Saturday afternoon, Aaron and Zydeco sat in the stands at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, holding beers and hot dogs. During a quiet moment, she leaned over and kissed Aaron passionately on the lips. After the game, they went with the crowd to one of the area's sports bars where they celebrated for several hours. After that, they returned by taxi to their hotel, where they made passionate love. They were lying entwined watching late-night TV when a message vibrated on Zydeco's phone. She reached over to the nightstand, grabbed the phone, and held it between the two of them. "These aren't even the same guys from yesterday," Aaron croaked. Zydeco kept her fingers on her non-phone hand as each new partner appeared on the screen. She held up 2 fingers on the hand she was using after dialing 5 and lowering them all. "So, you're telling me she was a faithful wife about a year ago?" "I find it hard to believe," Zydeco said, looking at Aaron's sad face. On Sunday morning, after a session of slow, sensual lovemaking and showering, the couple chatted in the kitchen while Zydeco prepared a bunch of bacon, eggs, and toast. "Gods, she also cooks," Aaron joked. "I cook a wide variety of foods. I really am a domestic goddess, in addition to being a badass biker chick," enthuses Zydeco. "You just assumed that my life was riding Hank on a big hog and having sex. Hank actually co-owns the Harley dealership where we live. However, we have our moments, and I would not advise anyone to get involved with Breaker because then they will see the ugly side. But when they go out on the road, for example, at a rally, they look more like a gang than a club. Lots of partying, some fighting. At home, I am in charge of the house. I cook, clean, and decorate. My job is to make sure my man is happy and healthy. Probably not much different than what Josie does for you, even if she has a lover on the side. You said to yourself that she hid it from you very well. Okay, I understand your life better, but how do you feel about fidelity? Particularly you," Aaron said. The Zydeco stopped chewing. Her brows furrowed as she thought. "I am completely devoted to Hank. Yes, I sometimes have sex with a few other breakers, but that's only when Hank tells me to, which thankfully doesn't happen very often. After all, I am his woman," she replied. "So, if you were my woman, I would be completely devoted to you, and would only have sex with you if you didn't order me to have sex with others. But you don't strike me as that kind of person," she said. It was Aaron's turn to look thoughtful. Unlike Zydeco, he didn't stop chewing. In fact, he began to chew more consciously. "So, what will you be doing in the next few months?" he asked, smiling widely. Aaron and Zydeco were sitting in his car, waiting for another car on the street outside Hank's house Monday afternoon. When the server process arrived there, all 3 approached the house. Josie and Hank were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when the 3 of them entered. Aaron advised Hank on what was going to happen, so he sided with Josie, while the young woman with Aaron and Zydeco served Josie with divorce papers. She reflexively reached out to take the offered envelope before realizing what it contained. "But we've both been doing this exchange for the last 2 weeks." Josie began to cry. "Actually, you pushed it. You can't be serious." "This is as serious as a heart attack, baby, because I didn't force Jack Long on you," Aaron said in a whisper. Josie's eyes widened as she unsteadily rolled back into the seat from which she had risen. She looked at every face in the room before her gaze settled on the floor. "You knew?" "How could you know?" she whispered, almost rhetorically. "I had no idea until it was handed to me. He threatened to post your damn videos, literally, on the internet, so everyone could see if I applied for the director position. when Nathan announced that he wanted the job and was afraid I would get it if I applied. Jack long played with you, but now that I'm divorcing you, what he does with those videos doesn't bother me anymore, Aaron said. Will you let him destroy me? Josie asked weakly. Our parents, our friends, everyone we know. But it was okay that you let him destroy me. You not only seduced my coworker, but also a guy you know I don't get along with. And you did it without even blinking. Your acting was so good. I had no idea, Aaron said. Tears began to flow from Josie's eyes as the others in the room watched. No, you can't use the plumbing gambit, Aaron said. It wasn't something finished or a quick drunken romp. It was an ongoing thing. I don't love him, A. I love you. I don't want a divorce, she said. Blah, 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 Aaron said. Wait, is that why you've been changing me for the last 2 weeks? Is this your way of punishing me? She asked. Not really, but when I saw you flirting with Hank, I decided it was my turn to get some, although obviously not as much as you. So now we're going to change something else. I brought a whole bunch of your clothes with me. Zydeco is going to take more of her things. And you're going to let Jack post my videos online? That's where Hank comes in. He assures me that he can be very persuasive. He's a real person, Aaron said. I have to meet Jack on Wednesday. Hank will go instead of me. Hank smiled and put his hand on Josie's shoulder. It's the least I can do for my woman, he said. What if I say I don't want to change anymore? Asked Josie. Well, I suppose you could stay in one of the kids' old rooms, but there's no way we're sleeping in the same room. Wouldn't you enjoy staying here more than being at home right now? Facing all these questions from your friends and family? She had to admit that being outside the mainstream seemed like the best option. A couple of days later, Jack Long didn't look happy when a large, scruffy-looking man sat down across from him at the table where he had been sitting for lunch while waiting for his colleague, Aaron Royce. Sorry, I think you're at the wrong table, Jack said. Oh, no. I definitely have the right desk, Mr. Long. Hank smiled. Aaron applied for Nathan's position around the same time Hank was convincing Jack that posting pictures of Josie online was a bad idea. Jack didn't return to the office after lunch. In fact, he called in sick the next day. When he returned to work 3 days later, he looked like he had fought a few rounds in the MMA octagon and was limping. The board ultimately chose Aaron for the position. Although Josie was no longer afraid of her videos appearing on the internet, she was unable to change Aaron's mind about the divorce. She admitted to him that she was fully aware that Jack was trying to seduce her, but she was flattered to the point that she threw common sense aside. Sex with a man her husband didn't like was part of her attraction, she said. What did I do that made you end up in his arms? And in his bed? Aaron asked during a phone call. You didn't do anything, baby. It's all on me. I got carried away and let lust rule the day. It was so wrong, and it gave me even more pleasure, Josie admitted. Can't we move past this? I love you. Do you love me? Isn't that enough to earn us a second chance? You say you love me, but you definitely disrespected me by having sex with my coworker for months, a man you knew I didn't like. I can never trust you again, Josie, Aaron said. There was silence on the line for a few seconds. Aaron thought she might have hung up when he heard his wife quietly sobbing. I want to come home, Aaron, to talk to you in person, she said through sobs. I don't want to talk to you, baby. Hank is a good person. You enjoy spending time with him. You definitely seem to enjoy being a biker chick, he said. He couldn't see the grin and then the guilty expression on her face. She didn't know that Aaron was tracking her through Norm, who often sent videos of Josie having sex with various members of the club, often several at the same time. Hank didn't seem to be as bothered by Josie's sex with other men as he was by himself. Hank is a very laid-back guy, Aaron, Zydeco said one day when she showed him a video of Josie having sex with 2 guys at the same time. I think I could fool around too, but I never felt like it would be right. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned. In that sense, I'm old-fashioned too, Aaron said. Aaron looked at Zydeco the way a starving man looks at a buffet. She grinned shyly. She had seen him look at her that way several times over the past month. She knew what she hoped that look meant, but she didn't dare even dream about it. She was a biker chick, almost a piece of property, and he was a handsome, decent man with a wife, at least for now. They came from different worlds. Aaron had been living with the young woman for a month. At first, she was a fun distraction in his crumbling personal life. Then he began to see her as a girl. After living with her for a month, he began to consider her as his partner. He looked forward to coming home to her every evening after work. He liked to share new experiences with her. He noted that she viewed life through a different lens than he did and found joy in that. He loved waking up to her every morning. It wasn't the same as it had been with Josie when he sat up and examined it. On the other hand, he rarely compared Zydeco to his soon-to-be ex-wife. He almost felt guilty for being able to distance himself from Josie so quickly after 13 years of marriage. He concluded that perhaps he was not so much distancing himself from Josie as he was moving closer to a new reality. "Zydeco, do you like it here? With me?" Aaron asked, as the couple sat on the couch watching a series on Netflix. They sat sort of sideways, her legs resting on top of his and his hands rubbing the inside of the thigh of her nearest leg. It dawned on him that they often sat together, practically touching each other. They often held hands, and the young woman was indeed very touchy-feely. "Is it true? I like it here. With you. I'll stay here as long as you let me, Aaron," she said. "So you're not bored with my measured life? Don't you miss traveling? Biker life? Hank? Because I would really like it if you stuck around for a while longer, maybe in the next 50 years or so. How about making this exchange permanent?" he said. Zydeco looked at him with wide eyes that began to sparkle with tears. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice unable to be loud. They pressed their faces together and locked their lips for what seemed like hours. But in reality, it only lasted about 30 seconds. "I need to talk to Hank," Aaron said quietly. Aaron was surprised when Hank immediately agreed to a permanent exchange of women. "Josie is a damn gymnast in bed, and she really likes this lifestyle," Hank said. "I love Zydeco to death. She's a wonderful girl. She deserves the brass ring that you are. She would stay with me forever if I asked, because I helped her once, and she is incredibly loyal, but I know she deserves better." Aaron had a sad smile on his face as Hank spoke. "Once upon a time, I would have told you that Josie was a wonderful girl and incredibly loyal. Now I know better." It took Hank a minute to recognize the two people standing in front of him. After all, it had been 20 years since he last saw them. Aaron and Zydeco were at the Harley dealership to buy a hog touring car. With both of their children now in college, the couple was single and had time on their hands. They decided to make traveling across the country by motorcycle their next big adventure. They went to an old friend to buy a motorcycle. When Hank's face finally showed recognition, Zydeco stepped forward and kissed the big man tenderly on the cheek. As she stepped back, Aaron stepped forward with his hand outstretched, and the two men began to shake. Hank invited the couple into his luxurious office so they could chat privately. "You look amazing, Zydeco, and for an old man you don't look too bad, Aaron," Hank exclaimed. "What brings you here today?" At 43, Zydeco still weighed no more than 10 pounds of the weight Hank had last seen her at. It was obvious to Hank that she had spent many hours in the gym. Her husband, who was 15 years older than her, looked just as fit for a man of about 60, Hank thought. Aaron rated Hank the same way he rated the two people sitting in front of him. He noted that Hank had gained about 20 pounds over the past 20 years, much of it apparently from his belly hanging from what looked like an expensive leather belt. Both Aaron and Zydeco noted that the dealership appears to have done very well over the past 2 decades. Aaron smiled to himself. He genuinely liked Hank and was glad that the man seemed to be doing as well financially as he had for the past 20 years. Soon, Zydeco pulled out her phone and showed Hank photos of both of the couple's sons. Both parents were very proud of their boys. "It looks like the dealership has done well," Aaron said. Hank spent a few minutes talking about his successful business, while his friends listened attentively. "What about your personal life, Hank? Children? Woman?" asked Zydeco. The trio exchanged significant glances. Hank looked at the wedding ring on his finger and grinned. "If you're asking about Josie, no, I'm not with her. I fell in love with a nice Catholic girl, and although she agreed to live with me, she told me that we couldn't have children unless we were married, so I have 3. We have been married for 14 years. She's a superwoman." Hank pulled out his phone and started showing a couple photos of his family. He smiled widely. "As for Josie, she lived with me for about 5 years. When I found Caitlin, I gave Josie to Steve and she became his woman. She'd always had a thing for Steve, so that was more than okay with her. As I told you years ago, Aaron, she seemed to really enjoy being a biker chick. For a while, I think she liked it too much. You left her after the divorce in pretty good shape money-wise, but she kicked the habit pretty quickly. However, she went to rehab and made it through, and she and Steve are still together. I still see her from time to time when the group gets together for family events. She still looks pretty good for her age. But you know, there's a reason most people think of biker chicks as young and hot." Aaron and Zydeco shook their heads knowingly. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.